Greetings, my name is Monty Martin.
And I'm Kelly McLaughlin.
And we are the Dungeon Dudes. Welcome to our channel where we cover everything Dungeons & Dragons, including advice for players and guides for Dungeon Masters.
We upload new videos on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so please subscribe to our channel so that you never miss an episode.
Today we are taking a look at our top high-level Cleric spells in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition.
Now, the Cleric has some of the best spells in the game and some of the most accessible spell casting. Today we're going to be looking at spells from level 6 to 9 and talking about our favorite choices for those high-level clerics out there.
It's very easy to load up on a couple staple spells and think that you have to bring heal, resurrection, and keep your spell slots open for those really important healing spells. But that's missing so much of the power that is packed in the high-level cleric spell list. So today we're going to go through some of these high-level spells and maybe open your mind up to some of the really powerful options clerics have that are a little bit more exciting than just tossing around a few healing spells and patching up your dead party members after they got splattered by an iron golem.
Keep in mind that the bread and butter of the cleric spellcasting is going to be your lower level spells. And when we're looking at spells of level 6, 7, 8, and 9, you're actually not going to be gaining any of your domain spells during this time. There's a lot to discuss today, so let's get rolling. So we'll kick things off today with our 6th level spell choices. Now, clerics have a really great list of spells for 6th level. And there are some pretty staple spells in here, but Monty and I each chose what we think our favorite choice is.
I think our choices are really interesting at this level because the two spells that Kelly and I both picked are not actually spells that you need to use your spell slot during the adventuring day to gain the advantage of. My pick is Forbiddance. This is a 6th level abjuration spell that is one that is very easy to miss when you're reading over the spells in the spell list because it is a casting time of 10 minutes and it's a ritual spell. Let's look at what the spell actually does though. When you cast Forbiddance, you create a ward against magical travel that protects up to 40,000 square feet of floor space to a height of 30 feet above the floor. For approximation, this is a roughly 200 foot by 200 foot area. It bars creatures from entering the area using teleportation and planar travel, but this is just the gravy of this spell, because the spell damages creatures of a type that you choose when you cast it. You can choose one or more of the following: Celestials, Elemental, Fae, Fiends, and Undead. In other words, all those high-level nasties. When a creature of the chosen type enters the spell's area for the first time, or it starts its turn there, it takes 5d10 radiant or necrotic damage, your choice when you cast the spell. There is no saving throw or way to prevent the creature from taking this damage. If they enter the area or start their turn there, they're going to be hurting. And considering that many high-level enemies are Fae, Fiends, and Undead creatures, you have now the ability of preparing a massive 200 by 200 foot battlefield that is a death zone for some of the most dangerous creatures in the entire game. Very few of these creatures are going to have resistance against radiant damage. And if you know you're fighting Celestials, you just pick necrotic. There's an expensive material component that is required, but it's not consumed when you cast the spell. You just have to have those materials to cast it. So this means that if your cleric has 20 minutes to set up the battlefield, you can create an almost insurmountable advantage against some of the most dangerous and deadly creatures in high-level play.
My choice for 6th level spell was Hero's Feast, which is a 6th level conjuration spell found on page 250 of the player's handbook. This spell conjures forth a glorious feast for you and your party members to indulge in, which gives you a number of various benefits moving forward for 24 hours. So for the next whole day, you're going to be well fed and well prepared for anything that comes at you. The creature is cured of all diseases and poisons, becomes immune to poison and being frightened, and makes all wisdom saving throws with advantage. Also, its hit point maximum is increased by 2d10, and it gains the same number of hit points. One of the great points to make about Hero's Feast is that it has a 10-minute casting time, but it lasts 24 hours. This means that a smart player can cast this before a long rest, which means that it doesn't actually expend your spell slot. You'll use your 6th level spell slot to cast Hero's Feast. Everybody eats up, gains all of these glorious benefits. Then you take your long rest and wake up the next day with the benefits continuing, but now you have gained your 6th level spell slot back. Because of this, Hero's Feast becomes a great asset for the party, and it means that a cleric can reliably use Hero's Feast to bolster their entire party for several days on end or at multiple times during a campaign.
It is worth mentioning that Hero's Feast does have a costly material component, a jeweled bowl worth 1,000 gold pieces that is consumed by the spell, meaning that you're going to rack up a pretty hefty dinner bill by casting the spell. But the benefits are absolutely worth it. Better than almost any potion or any sort of consumable item that your party could possibly have.
In the worlds of Dungeons and Dragons, a lot of parties end up accumulating a fair amount of gold and don't really have that many things to spend it on. So a cleric might buy a few $1,000 gemmed bowls to carry around with them so that they can whip out a Hero's Feast if they need to. If you're sitting around with a few thousand gold jingling in your pockets, this might be the best way to spend it. Because of the way that these spells work, one being a ritual and one with the option to cast it before your long rest, this means that you open up your 6th level spell slot for some of the other great choices that clerics have. Things like Create Undead, Word of Recall, or of course Heal, which are all pretty classic and really awesome 6th level spells for the cleric to take. So now, pack as many of those as you want along with these two, and you're going to get a lot of mileage out of your 6th level spell slots.
When clerics reach their 7th level spell slots, of course, many of them are going to want to be bringing along Resurrection. But that really ignores just how much of an impact clerics can have on the battle itself with their 7th level spells, because there's some fantastic and unique choices. My favorite here at this level is Divine Word. This evocation spell, found on page 234 of the player's handbook, requires only your bonus action to cast. When you utter the Divine Word, creatures that can hear it within 30 feet of you suffer a horrific effect based on the number of hit points that they have remaining if they fail a charisma saving throw. For creatures that have more than 50 hit points, nothing's going to happen to them. But if they have 50 hit points or fewer, they could be blinded, blinded and deafened, blinded, deafened, and stunned. And for creatures that have 20 hit points or fewer, they're simply killed instantly, making this a great way of sweeping out a large number of minions that are in an area. However, don't miss the last sentence of this very powerful spell. Regardless of its current hit points, an elemental, celestial, Fey, or fiend that fails the charisma saving throw is forced back to its home plane, assuming it's not there already. And it cannot return to your current plane for 24 hours by any means short of a wish spell. Effectively, Divine Word is mass banishment, and this effect does not require your concentration. You simply utter the Divine Word, and all the fiends before you must be gone.
If you're playing in a campaign that has a lot of fiends that are minions, or you're near that end of the game and there's just a lot of enemies on the battlefield, this is a surefire way to clear out a battlefield really, really quickly. And I think that speaks volumes about it. And even if they're not fiends, the spell itself is great. That last sentence is excellent. And stacking them together just makes this spell such a hidden gem amongst the options for a cleric.
This spell is even a threat to boss monsters that might be fiends or elemental creatures. Even demon lords potentially could be susceptible to this, assuming you get past their high saving throws and legendary resistance. This spell threatens to end encounters against fiends outright.
With all this discussion of planar travel, we're going to come to my 7th level choice, which is plane shift. With all the various methods of traveling around the planes, you have to keep in mind that your party could end up somewhere that they never wanted to be, stuck in a plane of existence fighting to get home. If you have this spell, that's no problem. If your enemies retreat to a plane of existence, that's no problem. Let's talk about what this spell actually does. When you cast Plane Shift, you and up to 8 willing creatures can teleport to another plane of existence. You can specify a location, or you can choose a teleportation circle that you know of in that plane of existence. It's important to note here that there is a material component required for this spell, and it's important to have this before you decide to cast the spell. This requires a tuning fork tuned to the plane of existence that you wish to travel to. So for the DMs out there who have a player in the party who has this spell, you might want to include a tuning fork and have that be a quest that maybe they can go on, or somewhere where they can acquire a proper tuning fork to use this spell properly. But once you have that, you can travel to that plane of existence and specify the location.
I actually do make it a rather significant plot point in my own campaign worlds that tuning forks are extremely valuable objects that are fought over quite commonly. Because they do have a costly component of 250 gold pieces and do need to be attuned to that plane, this does give a dungeon master some control over how much plane hopping can actually occur in your world. And it might be a really interesting plot point if, say, for instance, tuning forks linked to the material plane are exceptionally rare, meaning that it's possible to use plane shift to get to lots of other places, but getting back is a whole other problem.
The other thing to note about this spell is that final point in the spell description, which basically turns the spell into an offensive spell that can be a improved banishment. You can choose a target that is unwilling to travel to a different plane of existence. You make a spell attack roll against them, and they make a charisma saving throw. If they fail, they are forced to the plane of existence of your choosing, and it's up to them to figure out how to get back. What's really key here is something like the banishment spell sends the creature to their own plane of existence, whereas with this one, you can send them to any plane of existence you choose. So you can take that humanoid that you're facing and send them to hell, and it's up to them to figure out how they're going to get back.
Pretty aggressive, considering this is a melee spell attack, meaning you just put your hand on their shoulder and say, "See you in hell, buddy." Bear in mind that when you are using plane shift aggressively, you also still need the tuning fork for that destination.
Another spell that we wanted to say is an honorable mention here because it's great for world building and flavor is Temple of the Gods, which was a spell introduced in Xanathar's Guide to Everything.
Temple of the Gods allows you to conjure up a temple dedicated to your deity, which is protected and warded against invasion in many various ways, and requires only your holy symbol to cast. Notably about Temple of the Gods is it layers really, really nicely with the effects of Forbiddance. And like Forbiddance, if you cast it in the same spot over a period of time, the effects become permanent. So if you're a high-level cleric, once you reach 13th level and have 6th and 7th level spells, you can create a stronghold with Temple of the Gods, warded with Forbiddance, and you've got a great base of operations for your entire party. A perfect place to set as your destination for a word of recall. You can have that just outside the temple itself.
And then you all go inside the temple and have a hero's feast while you relax in this beautiful, glorious temple. Really, the cleric can set up an entire base for the whole party, maybe even an entire fleet of troops to just hang out there, getting ready for the battles to come.
Let it never be said that a cleric is not a good shepherd, for they take care of their flock.
So as we move into 8th level spells for the cleric, there are actually only 4 to choose from, which means that if we're looking at 2 of them, we're really going to be talking about majority of these spells. They are all really great spells. The ones that spoke to me the most are Earthquake and Control Weather. I love the earth-shattering power that these spells have to just control the elements around you. Earthquake is a significantly potent, damaging spell. It has a 100-foot radius, and it can destroy buildings and cause all sorts of mayhem within that area. You can destroy an entire city with this spell.
You can open up fissures and send your enemies tumbling down into them, and just cause Old Testament-style destruction with these spells. Not every battle you want to create an entire earthquake that is affecting such a massive area, which can be as much of a problem for your allies as your enemies. In those circumstances, I think that a cleric wants to bring Holy Aura. Holy Aura is an 8th level abjuration spell that with a casting time of 1 action, and its effects last for 1 minute. When you cast the spell, it sends out a pulse of power that affects creatures that you choose within 30 feet of you. Those creatures gain advantage on all saving throws, and attack rolls made against them are made with disadvantage as well. They shed a dim light for the duration as well, and when a fiend or undead strikes them with a melee attack, that fiend or undead has to make a constitution saving throw or become blinded for the duration of the spell, which, considering the creature is already going to have disadvantage on attack rolls against them anyways, the blinding part might not really be too relevant, but it can stop them from casting certain spells and gaining line of sight. So that's pretty useful in general, and just being able to give your entire party advantage on all saving throws and have all attacks made against them have disadvantage is an amazing buff spell. Like, you compare this against Foresight, which has a similar effect for an entire day, but for only one person, to the impact of advantage on all saving throws for your allies and disadvantage on attacks against them. This is the defensive elements of Foresight for your entire party in an 8th level spell slot. A well-prepared cleric can create a bastion for their faith.
Well, the gods themselves are the ones who are creating a lot of the rules and laws of the world. And so a cleric pulling on those powers becomes godly themselves. And so they really do get that control over the world.
And I think that that's where, as we move on to the 9th level spells, a cleric really wants to make sure that they have a good relationship with the other forces of good and celestial forces of their own deity as well. Because, again, with 9th level spells, there's only 4 picks. And one of them is True Resurrection, and one of them is Astral Projection, and whether or not you need those spells is actually going to depend on your campaign. So the only other kind of 2 spells that we can really look at for our 9th level spells are Mass Heal and Gate. And that's why I want to talk about Gate, which kind of gets a bit of a bad rap in 5th edition D&D, because it isn't the Gate spell of prior editions. But I think that this spell is still amazing, and here's why. Gate is a 9th level conjuration spell with a casting time of 1 action and a duration of 1 minute. When you cast the Gate spell, you can name a precise location on another plane of existence, and a 20-foot diameter portal opens up, linking your current position and that other plane of existence, allowing travel between those 2 points across worlds. When you cast the Gate spell, you can also name a specific creature to be drawn through that gate onto the other side. Well, you don't have any power over this creature. It can choose what it wants to do. It can help you, it can leave, it can attack you, whatever you need to do. I think that this spell is a very good reason to consider your cleric's relationship with their deity. Because if your cleric can go into a battle on good terms with their god and open up a portal to that god's divine realm with their blessing, a portal which your god can now send their celestial host through to help you, you have a very interesting ace in the hole. This is going to obviously be subject to DM discretion in many, many respects. There's a lot of subjectivity here. But the fact that a shrewdly negotiating cleric who negotiates with the celestial host of their deity could all of a sudden open up a horde of angels and call them down as reinforcements, I think that's a power that we cannot ignore.
I think that is what is missed when you read this spell. When I first read this spell, I didn't even acknowledge the bringing an entity through. I just read it and said, oh, cool, I can open a gateway to any plane of existence, and why would I name a creature? That seems confusing and weird. It didn't really occur to me immediately that I could open that gate to a realm that I am associated with as a cleric. And that changes the game for this spell.
And even if you don't have that kind of pull with your deity, there's some interesting ways of setting up the spell to work. For example, if your adventure is on another plane of existence, maybe you just have a calling card to an order of paladins on the material plane. So when you're going down and battling Orcus in the depths of the abyss, why don't you open up that gate and bring through the reinforcements from the material plane so that an army of paladins can ride through to help you? Now, of course, the gate only remains for 1 minute, so maybe you're going to have to plan this really carefully. It's still going to be a limited number of reinforcements you can bring through in the minute that it opens up.
A small army.
But what an epic conclusion for a campaign.
Yeah.
It's like a story in a spell. And that, to me, again, is what makes it such a special choice.
So when we look at all of these spell options, the great thing about a cleric is that a lot of people are going to be packing those healing spells that are classic and clutch and really great for a cleric. But you shouldn't ignore the amazing, earth-shattering power that the spell list of the clerics have. And with the clerics having the flexibility of choosing their spells at the beginning of each day, it means that you really get to play around with the great power that comes with the cleric spell casting. So check out these spells and check out all of the other high-level spells and take the opportunity to play around with your cleric spellcasting and have so much fun bending the will of the gods to change the world around you.
Many of these high-level cleric spells require careful preparation and material components. So make sure that you pay careful attention to the casting times, requirements, and the material components needed, especially because some of these spells consume the material components, but others do not. So be aware of how that works out when you are looking for the offerings that you will be putting forth to the gods when you call down these incredible miracles.
So this has been a look at high-level cleric spells in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. If you've used any of these spells to great effects in your game, tell us about it in the comments below.
The videos that we create on our channel are made possible thanks to the incredible generosity of our Patreon supporters. A massive thank you to each and every one of you out there on Patreon for helping make our work possible. If you enjoy the work that we create on YouTube, please consider checking us out on Patreon as well by following the links in the description below.
And don't forget to check out our live play in the Worlds of Drakkenheim, which airs Tuesday nights at 6 p.m. Eastern at twitch.tv/dungeon_dudes. You can find all the previous episodes of our current campaign right up over here.
And we've got plenty more videos covering the various high-level spells for other classes in D&D 5e right up over here.
Please subscribe to our channel so that you never miss an episode.
Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time
in the dungeon.